All right, the Combine is done. Let's look back at the Combine, talk about how things have changed. Let's look ahead to free agency. Let's talk about perhaps some conflicting stories about the biggest change the Texans made this week. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's.
All right, it is the locker room, number one source for Texans digital content. I am Landry Locker. Just got back from the NFL Combine. Looking back at that, looking ahead at free agency, something the Texans will do. I can guarantee you they will do. If they don't, there's some big problems. And a change that they made that you're hearing multiple things about, but it doesn't matter in the big scheme of things because it almost feels like past trust issues have emerged. We'll get into that in a sec. Shout out to everyone that rode along with myself and Cody Stoots, Houston Football SNL, Monday through Friday, right here live on YouTube at 4 o'clock. We're going to be at Spanky's. We've added 2 more days this upcoming month to Spanky's. The Friday of free agency, which will be the 13th, Friday the 13th. And we'll have a good idea of where the roster is. And then the 27th, Spanky, Sharpstown. Hope to see you there. Always a good time at Spanky's. I want to start with the Gerrod Johnson decision. This is a decision that we've been talking about for a while. This was something that the Texans, I heard, decided to do earlier in the month. This wasn't like something that they decided to do at the Combine. I'd heard it was done. We'd actually gotten texts about it earlier in the week. But as you know, me and Cody, we are digital beat reporters, and we pride ourselves more in kind of combining the radio format with taking you inside the building every day and discussing football 365 days a year through the eyes of the Houston Texans organization. When it comes to newsbreakers and stuff, to quote the great Jonathan Moxon, rest in peace, pour one out for James V. I don't want your life. So when I hear whispers that someone may be going, maybe it'll get mentioned in passing on the show. But as far as getting in that news breaking business that a lot of people are in, and more power to you if you're in there. We know some people who are.
Hey, bro, Alpha Aaron here.
I don't want your life. But now that it is done, I do think there's a couple of things that are being said. And there's kind of conflicting stories about it that may or may not change the way you think about it. But I think there's a couple of things that I think we should touch on before we look ahead at free agency and look back at the NFL Combine. The report coming out of from Aaron, I think, was that Gerrod Johnson left on his own. That's fine. That even whether that's true or not, that is something that obviously maybe them and the Texans want to be said. And I can assure you, whenever D'Amico and Gerrod are asked about it, they're going to say, yeah, Gerrod did a good job. We're moving forward, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. It's going to be a typical word salad. You're not going to get much information on it. So that's the reports. Gerrod Johnson just left on his own. Gerrod Johnson's contract expired, and he went about his way. I heard from someone who's pretty fired up. You may have seen him a couple times on this show. I heard that Gerrod actually had 1 year remaining on his contract, and that they decided this earlier in February, not earlier in the month. It's freaking March. How about that? But that this was already decided, and that he actually had 1 year remaining on his contract, which is sweet because he's still going to get the 1 year of his contract, which is great for him. And they had already decided this earlier. I do believe, regardless of what, they had decided this earlier. They didn't go to the NFL Combine and wake up one morning and say, you know what, I'm going to get rid of Gerrod Johnson. And quite frankly, if they were going to do what they did, which was go with JCJ, a.k.a. John Carroll Jerry, as the quarterback coach, the timing really didn't matter because the guy was already in the building. So that's the he said, she said, the 1 year left on the contract or the contract expiring. But the reality is John Carroll Jerry is now the quarterback coach of CJ Stroud. Here's the thing. And I just tweeted this out on X. And this is kind of where I think a lot of the fan base is concerned, and I think a lot of the media types are quite frankly kind of amused. Gerrod Johnson, I don't know if Gerrod Johnson's a good quarterback coach or not. I really don't. I feel like he gets a favorable pin locally because he is a local guy. He's a good guy. CJ Stroud says a lot of good things about him. So when it comes to the local pin, I think a lot of times whether Gerrod Johnson was in year one and he was looking awesome and CJ was looking awesome and he was one of the toasts of the NFL and CJ was one of the toasts of the NFL, or whether there was struggles, whether it be in 2024 or at times in 2025. I think the way in which a lot of the local stories were presented about Gerrod Johnson, they didn't really change. But with what we see from the quarterback right now, kind of similar to what we saw from the offensive line 2 years ago, like a change is probably a necessary thing more times than not. Like a change is probably a necessary thing if your quarterback isn't better now than he was his first year, and many would say it's been a downward spiral, then a change is probably a necessary thing. I think most people can agree. I think a lot of people were very fired up about it in the fan base. So I think most people can agree with that. Here's the problem, though. Was it really even a change? Was it really even a change if the guy was already on the staff? Furthermore, I don't know if JCJ, John Carroll Jerry, is a good quarterback coach or not. But I have a healthy amount of skepticism that I don't know that he has to be. I think he just had to go to college where he went and brush elbows with Nick Caserio in New England. And I don't think that's an unfair thing to think. The John Carroll impact, Nick Caserio's college, Frank Ross's college. Frank Ross is a good coach. Skopinski's college. That's all over the place. So when you make the change, a lot of people wanted the change. Was it really a change if the guy was already on the staff? And is he good? I can't sit here and say he sucks. I don't know. You can go through his resume. He's worked for all New England guys, except the Rams, unless you consider that maybe Nick Caley, who had a higher up, kind of threw him a bone in with the Rams. And then when Nick Caley came to the Texans, he came with Nick Caley. You think about it. Jerry Skopinski has never gotten a job in the NFL that wasn't connected to his work in New England. And I'm not sitting here saying that's crazy. I mean, that's probably normal. I think there's probably a lot of examples of that, of some really good coaches. But you work under Belichick and Caserio. Then you go work under Brian Flores, who left New England. Then you go work under Josh McDaniels, who left New England. Before that, you work under Joe Judge, who left New England. You go to the Rams. With Nick Caley having a higher up position, you have basically like a notch above an entry level coaching position. And then when Nick Caley goes to Houston, you go to Houston with him. So does it matter if he's good, or is it just about the New England network? Now, the networking is just kind of part of life, but there's really very few examples of that New England network on the offensive side of the pill working outside of when it's Josh McDaniels and when Tom Brady is there. Josh McDaniels has a couple of examples. He did a hell of a job with Drake May this year. He was a couple votes away from winning an MVP. Josh McDaniels also did a good job with Mac Jones in year one. But that's the thing about this coaching change is initially, when Nick Caserio was hired, there was a real passionate plea that this is not the Patriot South, okay? And then it feels like once Nick Caserio had any opportunity, he's kind of made it look more and more like Patriots South on the offensive side of the ball, which is an experience that we're very familiar with. So did Gerrod Johnson need to go? Probably so. Gerrod Johnson was very quickly elevated to this position. You can make a case that Gerrod Johnson only got this job because he was at a camp with CJ Stroud. You can make that case. Gerrod Johnson had never been a position coach before. I think Gerrod Johnson's been coaching 6 or 7 years in the NFL. So you can make that case too. So maybe it's like from going from Gerrod's only here because of CJ to where John Carroll Jerry is only here because of Caserio. But that doesn't make anyone feel any better. Regardless of what the mystery is, regardless of if the mystery is solved, regardless of if we figured it out or not, it doesn't make anyone feel better when you look and you see the state of this offense, what it was, and this change is not going to create some sort of excitement. Like Justin Herbert last year, here's what's happened with Justin Herbert this offseason. Like it's almost unfair to compare Justin Herbert and CJ Stroud at this point because Justin Herbert's a better quarterback right now. Justin Herbert is getting back 2 of the best tackles in the league, and Justin Herbert has Mike McDaniel as his offensive coordinator. That's exciting. You can get excited about that. I think anyone can respect that and get a little bit excited about. John Carroll Jerry, I don't think too many people were excited. But there is a conflict. Did Gerrod Johnson's contract expire or did he have a year left? It depends who you ask. It is a locker room, #1 source for Texans digital content. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like the video. Be sure to ride along. We're talking about everything that went on at the Combine this week. And then we're looking ahead. And this is the interesting thing. I'm going to give you 5 things that have shaped up the most and that we learned at the Combine in a sec. But I want to first just kind of reset and restate the unique nature of the offseason, which many of you ride along with. So the NFL Combine's cool. For me, it's a cram session. Like it's an extreme cram session where you get in the room with a bunch of the prospects. You kind of get a feel outside of just like looking at video, and I don't pretend to be a tape guy. There's guys that I trust to watch tape. There's way too many fake tape guys at the Combine that act like they watch the tape. It's ridiculous. It usually takes a few hours to study a prospect. Some of these guys just put in like an hour of all 22 and they act like they're film experts. It bothers me. It's funny. It's amusing. I do enjoy it, but I do respect the ones who actually do it. But for me, and how I've always done this is you go to the Combine, you get a feel, you listen to as much information as you can, you get in the room with all the prospects, and it kind of gives you kind of a feel of what the opportunity is and, you know, what is and is not great, what positions are impressive, and you get that. But then you almost have to press pause because after you do that, you look down and you're cramming at the Combine from whenever you get there, from Tuesday to Saturday. And Stoots did the offensive lineman. SNL tomorrow is going to be offensive line heavy. Cody Stoots is my offensive line leader, my offensive line lord, my co-host on SNL. He's been all over these offensive linemen, and he really enjoys it. So we will go offensive line heavy on SNL. Be sure to subscribe. Also join us at Spanky's the 13th and 27th of this month. So we got you covered there. But you consume all this information. You get a grasp of these prospects. You kind of get excited about the draft because we all love the draft. But then you look down and you're like, damn, there's 2 months till this thing starts. And then you see and you hear, well, this team needs this and this team needs that. And then you realize, damn, it's 2 months until the draft. It's less than 2 weeks from free agency, which is where needs kind of shift and where that completely changes. So after you consume all this Combine information, you gather that, and then you got to press pause because you don't even really know what you're going to need. Like two Combines ago, we would have said, well, the Texans really, really need a running back. I mean, they've got to figure it out at running back. Well, free agency, they had Joe Mixon. So that completely changes. So that's kind of the way that you look at it. They need an edge guy. Oh, they signed Danielle Hunter. So it's a unique situation in that you consume all this information, you take it for what it is, you take it with a grain of salt, then you press pause, and I'll be damned, free agency is less than 2 weeks away. So that's just kind of where things are. But the one thing that you kind of get, if you already have your preconceived thoughts about the prospects, and then you get to see it, you kind of are able to weigh the opportunity of what is a possibility at the combine or at the draft, and what you probably need to go heavier in when it comes to free agency. And that's why my biggest take is, and I think this will happen, the Texans must, and I think they will, spend big money, quote, big money, on a free agent running back. I think the Texans are going to be, and this was my takeaway, and I know I'm always like draft running back. I still think you draft a running back, and it can be somewhat of a swing, but you got to be at the top when it comes to free agent running backs, like top 4, and I think they will be. And the names that we've been talking about are obviously K9, Kenneth Walker, who D'Amico Ryans likes a lot. We kind of knew that the week of Seattle. Tyler Algier is another one. That's kind of how desperate things are at this point. I've never been the biggest Algier guy. I don't know how they feel. But per reports, poor Josh Kindle of The Athletic, he's going to seek a contract around 3 years, $22 million. You might have to consider that. And then you have Travis Etienne, who don't necessarily think that that's a massive fit. Brees Hall, that's kind of a pipe dream. That's died. And you have some other options at the running back position, but you absolutely 100%, 100,000%, they have to, and they will be active in free agency at the running back position. It's going to happen. And then you have Rico Dowdle. It's not the most stacked free agent class, but they're going to be active in it. And when you see these running backs, there's one guy who's as good as it gets, and then there's a bunch of guys who are just there. And to put this in perspective, Mike Washington out of Arkansas, he seems like a great kid. He ran a 4.3. He got very emotional. John Harris, I think, has him as RB3. He's not someone that you can just completely depend on being a 1A, 1B with Woody Marks. Now, if the Texans sign one of these running backs that I'm talking about, that I think that they will, then, and right on cue, the Bearded Way says Washington Jr. from Arkansas. If they do, I'm still not opposed to drafting Mike Washington. I just don't think that's the number one plan. But when it comes to the top free agent guys, they have to be in the mix, and I think they will be in that mix. That's damn near a promise. And that was one of the things that we talked about at camp last year. It was very apparent this team was not going to be able to run the ball. Now, that was met with a little bit of criticism, understandably so. Like I've been known to make blanket ass statements a lot of the time, and they don't always necessarily hold up. But I, in my personal opinion, I watched that team in camp, and it was made videos about it. This team's not going to be able to run the ball, and they did not run the ball. And I think when you look at these running backs, first of all, when you're in the room with them, it's just kind of like, okay, they're there. There's nothing really special about it. But I think this is kind of telling too, and this is from Matt Miller. So there were 21 running backs at the combine. It's a smaller class too, and only 10 of them ran 40s. Now, a lot of times when you don't run the 40, it's because I don't know. Like a lot of times it's because you trust it more at your pro day. You don't want to take that kind of heat, but that only 10 of them ran 40s. Now, on the other hand, you have Jeremiah Love, who does every single drill, despite the fact he's clear RB1. But just think about that. Less than half of the running backs actually ran 40s, which is kind of bizarre to me. I mean, I don't think Matt Miller throws that out there without that. But the Texans will be involved in free agency. With whichever running back they like, they're going to go all in. And the good news about it is I don't think they're going to have too much competition because most teams have young running backs that they've invested in the last few years in the first 2 days of the draft. So the Texans must and they will spend money on running back in free agency. And I do not think that this should stop the Texans from perhaps drafting a running back, but I do think, and I would bet very good money, they will be aggressive at running back, which is music to a lot of people's ears. A lot of people got different tastes, but there you go. The other thing that I always get amused by is, well, you got to fix the offensive line, not the running back. Yeah, that's true. And obviously they're going to invest in the offensive line in multiple areas. But the reality is that the running back can make the offensive line better. We've seen that. I don't need to go through it. We've gone through it multiple times. Like Joe Mixon, it was different when Joe Mixon would run behind the bad offensive line and Dameon Pierce would run. You would see a big difference. Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce, you saw a big difference. Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, you saw a big difference. Jerrod Jordan and Nick Chubb, you saw a big difference. So the running back's important. There's never been, I don't think, it's very rare where a long run happens despite a running back, a poor effort by a running back. It doesn't happen that often. Despite a poor effort by the running back, a long run happened. It doesn't really happen very often. There's a lot of times where you see a running back, a long run happen or a solid run happen despite bad blocking. If you watch the Texans, you see that quite often. So the notion that, the running back's not important, I don't think this is even a situation where it has to be an either or. This isn't like you need a corner and you need an edge guy. The running back position, although the value of it and the way in which teams look at it, it kind of varies. It's still a relative bargain when it comes to the dire need that the Texans have in 2 weeks. So they can figure that out. So this conversation, especially once they start doing their cap gymnastics, it's not really a either or when it comes to the offensive line and running back. They're going to address both of those. And the difference between the offensive line and the running back in this situation, the big difference is you can get solid offensive linemen in this draft. There's probably opportunity all 3 days to get really solid offensive line play in this draft. There is a lot of possibility there. And the Texans have a lot of options. The versatility of Titus Howard kind of makes it to where you take a tackle, you take a guard. I don't think he stops you. If you think there's a good long-term guard, Titus Howard doesn't stop you from doing that. He's not a good enough player for that. If you think there's a good long-term tackle, Titus Howard doesn't stop you from doing that. He's not a good enough player for that. His versatility, though, like in the short term, and the fact that you're already kind of invested in him, it does allow you to be flexible. But running back, that's not the case. There's not much there at running back. Some of these guys could end up being good players. Some of these guys could end up surprising a little bit. There's really not a lot of opportunity. It's a thin position. That's not the case on the offensive line. 5 takeaways from the combine, 5 obs, and things that happened when it comes to the Texans that I think can kind of change things when it comes to the way that we look at things, including, man, I don't know if it's too early to take him, but are we saying it would be crazy? Let's talk about that here as we go through 5 obs localized that kind of change perhaps the approach the same manner of the approach that we've been talking about with the running back in regards to the Texans. Be sure to like the video. Join us at Spanky's the 13th and 27th this month as the offseason is upon us. Ob 1, we saw Caserio stand by CJ Stroud. Now, he stood by CJ Stroud in 2026. This was a quote that got ran with. The word moronic was what was thrown out there. He stood by CJ Stroud. This was not a surprise. We knew Caserio would stand by CJ Stroud. Now, he's not going to stand by CJ Stroud post this season. If there's not significant improvement, then they're going to have to weigh their options. Now, speaking of options, they're going to pick up the fifth-year option. And that is something that should surprise no one who actually follows football. I'm not one of these people who says, you don't know ball or you know nothing about football whenever someone has like a different argument. But like, let's just be serious. Even if you're going to move on from CJ Stroud, having him under contract on the fifth-year option makes sense. It makes complete financial sense. So what they decide to do with that fifth-year option or whatever, that really doesn't impact anything. But I think it's the smart move. It's the right move that Caserio, you stick by him right now. You don't really have any options. Have you seen this draft? Have you seen this free agent class? There are people arguing, like having passionate arguments on the radio in Cleveland right now. And I know Cleveland's kind of the example we talk about when it comes to quarterback hell. Like there are people in Cleveland and Arizona, they're having passionate arguments right now. Whatever the equivalent is of SNL in the locker room, they're having passionate arguments about whether you would rather have Malik Willis or Anthony Richardson. Again, to quote Jonathan Moxon and to quote the great James V, pour one out for him, I don't want your life. So, of course, you want CJ Stroud on his rookie contract in his final season. You're not that mad. Like Nick Caserio is not going to just emotionally get pissed off about that. You did still get to the divisional round. There is still a possibility that maybe CJ Stroud turns stuff around. And if he doesn't, I mean, arguing about Malik Willis and Anthony Richardson right now or Kyler Murray, that's not quite the life that you want to take on. So Caserio stood by Stroud next year. No duh. No surprise there. But that was the number one headline day one of the combine. It was. So that really wasn't a surprise. We also have music to a lot of people's ears. Caserio being publicly open for the center upgrade. There's a lot of opportunity to get interior and outside offensive linemen. We've already talked about this. Jake Andrews wasn't good last year. He wasn't great. However, he does come from New England. Cole Popovich does know him. There was talk about the experience, the lack of experience he has. There was also talk about the fact that he was banged up. But in the reality of the situation is, even though the early talk was that Nick Caserio likes Jake Andrews and thinks he can be a good player, this is not something that you just feel awesome about heading into the season. If you can get a new center, get a new center. And Caserio being publicly open for that, it didn't lead NFL Network and Sports Center like the Stroud quote did. But when it comes to this space and the space that we speak on and the stuff that we talk about, I think it was music to a lot of people's ears, including mine and Cody's, who like Jake Andrews a lot. He's our guy. So we were very pleased to hear this. And I think most people were, because the center play needs to be better. It's kind of like the conversation at tight end, which we'll get to in a second, where what Cade Stover puts on the football field should not be on the football field next season. And what Jake Andrews put on the football field last year should not be on the football field next season. Now, I've kind of just completely shifted and I've kind of lost hope when it comes to Cade Stover. But as far as being a TE2, maybe he can be a TE3, but I think the tight end and safety opportunity is high, which is observation number 3. The tight end opportunity is high. Now, as we said, even after the interviews, like Kenyon Sadiq is not going to be there. That if that's going to happen, it's going to take a trade up. And I don't know how much you would have to trade up to get Kenyon Sadiq, but That's not happening. He put on an absolute display at the combine. The 40 time when you're running 4.3 and doing what he's doing, we can just kind of look past that. But there are some other good tight ends that really, really stick out. And I don't think the Texans are in a position to where they need someone that can block more than he can catch or catch more than he can block. They just need guys that can play. Now, obviously, you'd probably like one of each. I think this is a draft where you can perhaps draft 2 tight ends. Now, a guy that is very interesting now, and I think this guy probably played his way into the second round, is Eli Stowers. Eli Stowers was a very productive player at Vanderbilt, and he's kind of one of those guys who you're not going to really ask to line up and be a lead blocker or anything like that. Although he could probably do the Stover QB sneak thing, given the fact that he was a former quarterback at A&M. But Eli Stowers put up an absolute freakish display. 45.5-inch vertical. I didn't even know that was possible. That's like an NBA combine type stuff. And an 11.3 broad jump. And this is a guy who can also catch. He's very athletic. Now, last year, the Texans, they seem to be interested in the possibility of bringing in a guy like Elijah Arroyo. They ended up trading picks, so you didn't really have as much extra ammunition to work with, and they didn't end up doing that. But when I look at a guy like Eli Stowers, and maybe I'm overreacting to the combine, he was a day 2 guy no matter what. But when you're talking about that kind of freakish athleticism, you're talking about wanting to run more 2 tight end sets. Eli Stowers, I don't know when you have to take him. I could see someone, given the fact that the real debate is who is TE2. Eli Stowers is a guy I could see someone taking in the late first round at this point. I could see it. He's definitely going in the second or third round. And with that type of freakish athleticism, it's really tough to look past. And then you look at the guys who you think about as like blocking guys. Sam Roush out of Stanford. Sam Roush, he had a 38.5-inch vert, and he had a 10.6 broad jump. He grew up playing rugby, and he's a physical blocker. Maybe a little bit underrated as a receiver as well, and he's 267 pounds. And that's not even to mention some of the other guys that we've broken down. If you add Stowers and then you add someone who can block like maybe Roush, you got your tight ends of the future. And I think Stowers is a guy who can immediately catch and provide an element for CJ Stroud, something that he really needs consistently. You pair him with Schultz, and then you throw someone in there that's not Stover that can actually block. I mean, it's not like he's a terrible blocker. Eli Stowers might be able to block as good as Cade Stover. It's not a very high bar. I think a lot of times because Cade Stover's so limited on receiving, we think maybe, well, he can block. There's moments where he blocks better than he does, but there's also some extreme lowlights. But Eli Stowers, someone is going to get Eli Stowers, and someone is going to have a lot of fun and make their quarterback very happy with Eli Stowers. Seems like a pretty sharp kid too. Comes from a family of athletes. Pavia might owe him some of his NIL money, quite frankly. Pavia can't even see over the center, but he could damn sure find Eli Stowers. So Eli Stowers is a guy that I think a lot of people were excited about before, given how deep this tight end class is, but how uncertain it is when it comes to who number 2 was. I think Eli Stowers might fit into what the Texans want to do. And I know John Carroll Jerry has a tight end background. Nick Caley said he had a tight end background. Nick Caley also said he had tight ends last year. You didn't give him one. So who does Nick Caley like? I'm sure they like Roush. I'm sure they like Stowers. I'm sure they like a lot of these guys. I actually think the fact that they didn't meet with Stowers might tell you something, because they're always a little bit slick, a little bit cute. when it comes to their meetings. But Eli Stowers, how does he fit into what they do? He damn sure should. If you can have a freak athlete like that, and people like the Stover QB sneak, I think Eli Stowers could do that just fine as well. Absolute freakish display by him that I think that they liked. Tanner K from U of H, he's another guy that they visited with. I don't know, like, is he gonna make like an immediate impact? I don't know about that. We went through the tight ends the other day. There's some good ones. The Michigan pipeline. Maybe you go the German route there. There's a lot. The Bearded Ways on the chat says grab Jay Green, QB, and flip him to tight end. Dude's stats are ridiculous. He said he's not going to play a different position. I don't know if he's like capable of doing that, but why would you do that when you already have Eli Stowers, who is a tight end and is already a freak? I don't think you really necessarily have to worry about that, but he has said that he's playing quarterback at the next level. So you're talking about the kid out of Arkansas there. D Duster says some of y'all just want Kozoil because he went to U of H. He's 6'7", 250 and can't block. Not that good of a receiver either. There's a U of H bias. You know that. There's people who think Tank Dell's going to come back and be what he was in 2023. It's part of it, but yeah, he's an intriguing guy. But I mean, if you draft him after drafting one of the premium tight ends, then so be it. But if you're going to draft him as like this guy is your top hope to be much better than Cade Stover, I think you're kind of putting yourself in position. That's probably more of a day 3 type of thing. Max Clare, I think, might be too small for what they want. I like Max Clare. You see him, he looks a lot more like a receiver. And blocking is something that he's not necessarily known for. Jack Indry's out of Texas. He's a guy that I think could be a complete tight end with unrealized potential. So I could see him being a possibility. And then you go a little bit more down the list. There's some names, but as far as like the top 5, that like if the Texans want to get someone that could perhaps be a quality TE2 right off the top, I think Stowers. I could see Indry's. I don't know how they feel about Trigg. Jolie's kind of more of a receiver as well. Royer, I could see them liking. We know they like Notre Dame guys, so Eli R could be one. But Stowers is really the one that I look at and just say, my goodness. And I like Roush out of Stanford too. So if you ended up with those two guys, sign me up. Sign me up. The question is, I think at this point, it's a logical question. Is Eli Stowers there at 38? Maybe there's a trade back. I don't know whether he's there. So that's number 3. The tight end and the safety opportunity is high. Didn't really touch on the safeties as much. This is the most stacked front to back safety group that I've seen in a long time. And we know that they value the safety opposite of Kalen Bullock. We've seen that. I like Jalen Reed fine. And Jalen Reed, it was this point at the Combine last year when you talk about kind of filling out prospects and finding fit. It was this time at the Combine last year where I asked him about the Texans defense, and he said what he said. We posted the clip, and we kind of revisited now. The reality of Jalen Reed is he's been hurt twice now in his rookie season. And I think he's a rotational player. I think he could develop into being a good starter, but he's already been hurt twice. And even before that, he was a day 3 guy that you kind of fit in. Before they drafted Jalen Reed, they brought Jimmy Ward back, which I know is going to piss off some people in the chat. I can already see Brandon H. talking about the Jimmy Ward contract, which in fairness, he was talking about when they did it. And they also took CJ Gardner Johnson back in the Kenyon Green trade, and they gave him an extension. So that type of nasty ass safety near the line of scrimmage that makes plays, even with Jalen Petrie in the picture, they covet it. They invested decently in it. Like when you factor in the Jimmy Ward, and then the Jimmy Ward backup plan was the CJ Gardner-Johnson, and then you still drafted Jalen Reed with all that, they covered it. So don't sleep on them bringing in a pretty good safety. And there are some insane safeties. Like there are going to be on day 2, like even with the third pick that they have, there are going to be guys that can probably start for you right now over Jalen Reed. Because that's just kind of one of those positions that is just completely stacked, safety and tight end. It is an absolute embarrassment of riches. So 2 weeks from now, you get your running back, you probably add some offensive linemen, you add some other pieces. We'll get a much more clear picture of this, of what they're going to do. But there is a massive, again, observation 3. I want to emphasize this. Massive. I'm out of the running back business for a year. I'm in the free agent running back business. I still want to draft one, but maybe not till day 3. But there is a massive opportunity. I have shifted my business to the tight end, safety side of things. Running back needs to be in free agency. So that's ob 3. Observation 4, I think there's also opportunity at defensive end, defensive line, and linebacker. Pretty strong. Now, there are a lot of defensive linemen that make sense in the first round. Lots of them. There's a lot of defensive ends that could fall, given the fact that Danielle Hunter's contract's about to expire, and they could make sense at 28. Linebacker, I really like CJ Allen. Out of Georgia. And I think they will too. Freakish athlete, Kamari Lassiter teammate, SEC guy. I think D'Amico's going to like this guy. How much? Don't know. This feels like this could be the Caserio D'Amico. If they repeat what they did last year and they trade out of the first round and they get more equity, this is the perfect draft to do that. To where you just have a handful of picks in round 2 and 3, and you can just go to town and improve your roster that way. There's a big opportunity. And you're talking about trading out of 28. But right now, there's a lot of opportunity in the trenches, and there's a lot of opportunity at tight end and safety. You're not in the corner market at all. You're not in the quarterback market, and you're not in the wide receiver market. So those are your 3 best friends. Your 3 best friends as a Texans fan, Texans supporter, are quarterbacks. They suck in this draft. Wide receivers, they're not bad, especially once you get into like the money spot of day 2. And corners, those guys go. That's a blessing for you. That's just pushing what you need closer. And those are good things. Those are good things to not be in the market for, because those are very popular positions. The fact that the wide receivers and corners, you're not really overly in need of, and maybe there's an opportunity later to where you jump on that. But that anytime a cornerback or a wide receiver is announced, that's a good thing. If you're going with if you have rooting interest in the Texans. Observation number 5, the rookie running back needs to be a filler. And this is just kind of revisiting the previous notion that the Texans will and need to be active when it comes to free agency at running back. I don't think that shies you away from drafting a running back. You found Woody Marks on day 3 last year. Woody Marks has given you clues. He's given you the breadcrumbs. He's given you the clues. He's given you the clues. He's a good player, but you limp off the field every game, it's a clue. You're not going to look at Woody Marks' stats and say, well, this guy's injury prone. But when you watch every single game and you see the same guy limp off the field every game, like if something happens next year where he's a little bit banged up and has to miss some time, we shouldn't act like that's some sort of surprise. He's given you every clue possible. And maybe that's a usage thing. Maybe that connects to the free agent running back, kind of limiting the usage and finding the perfect mix with Woody Marks. But he's given you the clue. And I still think you eventually draft a back in this draft. but you better have your starting RB clearly in 2 weeks so that we can kind of tweak those needs heading into the draft. But that's just kind of where it goes. Draft talk, it goes on a brief break, and then free agency shapes it up, and then we're all in on the draft for a month and a half. I like the layout of the NFL. That's just kind of where things are. You go in that room, not the year to want running backs. Now, if you could take last year's draft, if the Texans were sitting at 28 in last year's draft, man, you don't even need to touch a free agent running back. We'd be having a conversation about Travion Henderson. We'd be arguing about Omarion Hampton. We'd be arguing about Quinshon Judkins. The tight end position, you'd kind of still be in the same situation. We'd be talking about Fannin. We'd be talking about Arroyo. The running back is completely different. The tight end is pretty similar to what it was last year, and then everything else is pretty stacked. But the Kenyon Sadiq thing did die. That's something that you poured out. Gerrod Johnson, his tenure with the Texans died last week. Any talk about Kenyon Sadiq being a Texan, that died as well. That's just kind of the way it be at this point. Let's go to the chat real quick. Some people are talking about Aaron Jones. Kevin says Aaron Jones will be available. That'll be something they'll have to look at too. And they can figure something out there. The Herding says, if you were a betting man, what position do you feel like the Texans would draft first? I have to see free agency first. I'm not trying to cop out. I laid out the possibilities. If you were a betting man, that's funny too. Because we know I am. I would have to see how they attack free agency, but I think right now you're looking at the D line and you're looking at offensive line, defensive line, and offensive line as we sit right now in the first round will be bets, but then you can sprinkle in the Stowers X factor and maybe even linebacker. That will be 100% the sense. Heisenberg says, how about addressing the tight end position? They will, and they have to. And they might sign a free agent and still draft a guy early. Dalton Schultz is in the final year of his contract. So that's where they go. Rob K8 says, we will be holding our D's in our hands again this draft. All the O-line and even some second rounders will be gone by the time we pick in the first. So we'll go defense because the best player available. Possible. Very possible. And it's not even necessarily best player available. They need defensive players. Like, I know the short term, you might say that they don't, but they do. Like they have no linebackers under contract past next season. They have no defensive tackles under contract past next season. Danielle Hunter's contract expires after next season. So it's not just a best player available thing. Like they need defense too. Maybe not in the short term, but they need defense. How would you feel? David says, how would you feel about Anthony Hill in round 2? I like Anthony Hill. I don't know how he fits into what they want to do. First of all, he looks like he's like 12. He's very physical at the line of scrimmage. They say his coverage isn't great. There are times where it's pretty rough, but there's also times where he'll kind of surprise you. I don't know if he, like, when I look at the linebacker position, maybe I just haven't really seen a clear, steady, constant display of D'Amico Ryans playing 3 linebackers because he has Petrie out there 90+% of the snaps. But I don't know if Anthony Hill fits. I tend to look at a linebacker there and say, okay, this guy's going to replace Henry Toto, or this guy's going to replace Azeez Al-Shire. If we're talking round 2, I think there's probably some linebackers that they might like more than that. CJ Allen, I don't think Anthony Hill and CJ Allen, when it comes to the Texans, are in the same category, but you never know. Maybe it's just about the fact that we haven't really had the visual of them with the 3 linebackers. But who knows? Do you think they pay a premium price for Linderbaum? No, I don't. I don't think that's happening. That would be really, really surprising, quite frankly, if they did that. And I don't know what Linderbaum's market's going to be. Baltimore's already leaked out that they've offered a crap ton of money, which is typically what Baltimore does. So that's already been put out there. And then you got to think some other teams are going to have a lot of interest in what he brings to the table. So there we go. Now we pause the draft talk until tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to have Cody Stoots go all in on the offensive lineman. The draft talk will still come up a little bit, but we're probably going to put an emphasis on free agency the next 2 weeks. And then after free agency, we're right back to the draft. We revisit everything that's gone on, and we adjust accordingly, and we make changes. Now, changes is a subjective thing. Is it going to be a actual change, or is it going to be a Houston Texans change where you change the quarterback coach by elevating the quarterback coach who goes to the college that everyone else on the staff seems to go to? Appreciate y'all for rolling through. Thanks for rolling with us at the Combine. It keeps getting better and better. Join us again at Spanky's the 13th and 27th of this month. And always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. What should the Texans do? What will the Texans do? One thing's for sure, you damn sure better go RB in free agency. Appreciate y'all for rolling through.
Every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localized every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up, we number one. You don't need